Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to our playlist How to Become a Ninja Developer. And this is another video. And in this video, we are going to talk about building the REST APIs. Okay, what are the best practices you must follow while building the REST APIs? I mean, the framework and the technologies can be anything. You might be writing in Java, you might be writing in the Node.js, Go, Python, Django, whatever. But the REST API standards are still same. How you should do the resource naming, how you should define the HTTP methods, how you are defining the response types and all. So I'm going to take a simple example of our simple code here. This is a simple Nest.js code, and here we are exposing things through the Swagger. So I'm building a REST API. I'm not writing the whole code. Here it is just a simple user controller, and here we are adding and defining all different routes for the users. Okay, so first of all, our resource naming. So what I'm doing is, if you look into the Swagger docs for this, it looks something like this. Okay, because I configured a Swagger with my Nest.js application, so I'm able to see the Swagger docs that looks like this. Now my resource name is users. Okay, on this resource name users, you will be defining all the routes. Okay, user, this is simply list of users, then user by id, user delete user by id, update user by id. So all these resource naming should be explicit whatever you are doing. So let's say when you start writing these APIs, what will happen is, this is http get, the resource name is users. Okay, it can be, the prefix URL can be API v1, it should be plural, and then you will be writing, okay, give me a single user by resource particular by id. This is http get users by id. So I'm looking for a particular resource from this list. Here if you wants to do the update, here if you want to do the delete. I'm deleting a particular resource, I'm updating a particular resource, and you can also do a patch for the partial update. Okay, now this is just a simple your users API. This is how the resource naming you will adopt. Okay, now let's say from the users, what else we can do. There is a nested resource from the users is, let's say, the books, because these are just nouns and you will read it like this. So users, this is my id, I'm looking for all the books which are assigned to this particular user id, right? So this is how the resource naming will work. Users, okay, I'm getting this particular user having this id, and I now want all the books. Okay, this is simply get. This is how you will be doing the nested resource. So users books, let's say I want to do the put, or I want to just get a particular book which is assigned to this particular user id. So books id. So here if you read it correctly, API v1 users, all the users, I'm looking for this particular user id, the books which are assigned to this user id, and I'm looking for only this particular book having this book id assigned to this user having this user id. Right, now you can define all the methods for it. HTTP get put, if you want to update this particular book id, or if you want to delete this resource from this user. Now in the API code, you will validate, okay, I give me all the books for this user, give me all the book, first of all give me this user id, give me all the books for this user id, and then I'm updating only this particular id, right? So these all are how you define the resources and how you put the namings, right? So there are lots of documentations available for this, like what all different methods we have: get, put, post, delete, patch. And this is how you will be doing the resource naming, the plural, books, users, and then book particular id, delete, post, patch. Okay, and when it comes to the nested resources, like I'm giving me this particular user and give me the order of this particular user having order id this. right? These are like best practices you will be following. And when it comes to the field selection, filtering, sorting, searching, pagination, you can just pass those things as a query params, like, okay, give me all the users having country UK, give me all the users whose creation date is this and greater than this. Okay, searching, sorting, you can just specify the parameters as a query params. So here we are passing all these things as a path param. Here you can pass things as a query params. Field selection, you wanted to just fetch only these particular list, or you wanted to pass only some field parameters, then you can just pass them as a comma separated. So I know that field is the property and these are the values you are looking for. Okay, and then your API should have proper status code of everything. So you can see here, this is a simple example I have created. I am already documenting that these are the API exceptions this it can throw: 401, 403, 404, 500 and all, because we are doing all those validations here. So because currently it's not something. So this is the users API. I didn't even update the description. Okay, API operation, list of all the users. Returns list of all the users. This is API operation, and this is API okay response, because this is API is expected to return 200 status code, right? And then you can also specify the types. Let's say I'm doing get. Similarly, you can also add another methods. This is get users, because we are building the REST APIs. So get users, you can pass the query parameter, or I don't have any criteria, so I want to return all the users, and the user has the property, let's say the name, email, right? These are the two properties I'm returning from these APIs. So we can also expose like what kind of response these APIs are going to return. So we can use the DTO for that. User list response, this is, let's say it is going to return the ID. ID is also some kind of a UUID. So we can copy some dummy response. This is my controller. Okay. Now, how can I explain through the Swagger doc that this is going to return these three properties only, and I can expose those to the Swagger? So ID, name, email. So I have ID, I have name, and we have another property is email. So you just need to use these Swagger docs API response property, and then you can expose all these properties in the DTO. Name, email, user list response. Okay, so what you can specify is this is going to return 200 status code. Here you can set a type. User list response is already of type array, and you import the user list response. Okay, now your Swagger doc, I will just update these methods also. So this is a search get users. This will be get user by ID. This is, let's say, update user by ID. And let's say this is delete user. Now if you go to your Swagger, you should be able to read these properly. Okay, this is not updated. Maybe I need to kill this and then rerun it. Npm run start dev. This is my simple controller. I mean, these are the different same routes. So first of all, I didn't update the code properly. This is get all the users, then this is get user by ID. This method is a delete, which is going to give me no content when you are deleting a resource. Similarly, this is post update user by ID. So I will be just passing the ID here. This is going to be the put, and this is going to return me the OK status code, and this is get by ID. So we are fine with that. We also need to use the validations for this ID, right? So because this is a path parameter you are sending, so I will be using param, and we can just do something in the DTO for that. So here I can just use export class get user by ID DTO. So here it should be API property and ID, and here you can just define your validation criterias. Like this is going to be the UUID. Is UUID should be okay. That's it, that's enough. Is UUID get user by ID DTO, and then you will use this get user by ID DTO in your controller everywhere to do the validation. So this is param. Okay, so now the validations will be applied because we are already using validation pipe here. So it will and we are putting the correct types using class validator. So this is update user by ID, this is delete user by ID. Everywhere we are passing this ID to delete a resource. This is again ID. Let's update this. Okay, now if I just try to refresh it, is it reloading automatically? No. So let's go and npm run start dev. Okay, and let's see this, and now you can see all the resources populated, and you can also see the description here, like okay, this is going to return all the list of users, and this is the example value. So writing these clean and concise structure really helps to understand, okay, what is the status code, what is the, first of all, what is the API description, what are the query parameters. Let's say these are having query parameters of type UUID, this is the example value, and these are the status code it can return, right? I need to update the message descriptions, but this is how you will do it, right? And Swagger will automatically reflect all the responses. So now you can also create a nested another route, because here this is a user controller, right? Now you can have another controller is user book controller, or let's say books controller, and this will be on top of users. So API v1 users and then books, right? So let's keep it only users, and then here the IDs will be okay, I wanted to get all the books, so ID give me all the books. So get books, simple method. Similarly, I want to get the users is already there, I want to get this user ID and then all the books, and then there is a book ID, right? So okay, these are enough for talking about example. So here I updated the routes, and this is my book controller I have created. So this is like a nested resource on top of users. This is a books controller, and this is books API tag. Okay, so get books book ID. Here we need to change these DTOs. First of all, this is fine for get books. Here also we need to pass the DTO. This is get user by ID DTO, and here we need to add another DTO. That DTO will do something different. because here we have two IDs, book ID and UUID. So I will have a book underscore ID, get user books by IDDTO. Okay, I will add that inside a book controller, because now we are passing two different path params, book ID and the ID. Return the list of books for the user, update all these API descriptions, and here you might be returning something else, the name of the book and the ID of the book. Okay, then you can just have a different response DTO for that. So here I have this, so I will create another response DTO for that. Get book list response, and I just have a name, no email, and I can use this in my controller. Return the list of all the user books. Okay, and when you run it, I need to restart the application, and I also need to add the book controller in my main module. Currently I'm not using any folder structure. I'm just talking about two different controllers, how to play with the Nest.js. You might be writing this in either Express or any other framework. The strategy applies same. This is just like a common principles which you should apply everywhere, either you write in the Express or any other framework. This is how your API resource naming should be. And then you can also talk about the paginations, searching, sorting, how the API structure should be. And you can see the different API tag. Here what I'm looking for, give me all the books for this user ID, and this is how it is going, the response is going to be. I need to get the UUID, right, and give me that particular book for the particular user ID, right, from the book list. So here we are passing two path params, ID and the book ID. I mean, I have posted millions of videos, I will say, on the Nest.js, and this is just a simple example how you expose through the Swagger based on the resources. And this is how, these are the things which you must follow while defining the APIs, the proper documentation, the proper status code that API will be returning. Like delete will return no content, update will return okay, then you might be having create user, right? So inside the user controller, there can be a post API. So currently we have get users, right? We are not creating user right now. So let's say I do have post also. It is going to return created 201. So it will return created user in the response. We will update it. So this is a create user, right? And this is going to take a payload as an input, right? So here it will be, we will pass body payload, and we need to create some DTO, create user DTO, right? So get user, instead of this I will just do a create user DTO, and we'll define that inside this DTO, export class, and we'll just pass the name and the email. That's it. So this is name is of type string. Okay, it should be API property, not API response property. So this DTO is actually request payload, right? So here API property, and we can just add a validation, age string is defined. So these are the required properties, name and email both are required. You can also add is email, so you don't need to do the email validations. This is being done through the class validator. Create user DTO, and then import this create user DTO in your controller, right? Create user DTO, and it returns something like this. So it will expose through the Swagger also. Okay, and for API OK response, it should be API created response. because we are not returning 200 status code, we are returning 201 API created response. Then this is going to give us this user list response, because it will be a single object, not a list. We are creating a user, so it will be a post create user. Okay, then let's update it, and then we will be done with this and we'll move forward. Okay, so API created. I still need to update the descriptions and all, but I think you can take care of that. So here you can see this is the example value of the payload. This is how you will be passing, and once user is created, this is going to return you the 201 status code with this is the response payload, right? So this is how you should structure your APIs. Similarly, for pagination, searching and sorting, you will be passing things as a query parameter, right? So what I will do here is, let's say I want to search a user, then search will still return 200 status code. Okay, and here I'm doing is get, it should be simple search. Let's say search is not a resource name first of all, but what we are doing is API v1 user search, or simply you can do with the get also, because get we already have. Either we can update this get method, which is giving us the list of all the users, right? Here we can pass the query parameter, so we don't need to define the new method. That's the right way of doing it. Here we can pass these query params, and we can define the query params having page, limit, offset, and then this API will become the paginated API, right? What we will do is we can simply do query, and simply is user list query DTO, and inside that you pass all your parameters. So this is my DTO, and inside this export class. So here you can pass page, limit, offset and all will be passed as a string, because these are the query parameters. Page limit and search text, let's say you are just passing a random search, and based on that you will be applying the search. Search text is of type string. User list query DTO, you can pass anything, and then you put that inside this DTO controller, and this is again you are going to return the list of the responses, right? List of all the users. Restart your applications, and let's see, npm run start dev. And we just updated this users API. Now it is taking these query parameters like search text, page, limit, offset, whatever, sort by, order by, all these things, and you are just applying the search on top of this API. We don't need a new API because we are already fetching all the resources. Now on top of that we are just applying the filters, searching, sorting, so we can just use this API. Okay, this is all about REST API standards to become a ninja developer. You can build on top of that, explore and learn, research, all those things you can do.